everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the Olive Knives Lenta. These knives are designed and assembled in the USA, and the materials are sourced from Italy, the USA, and Africa. This is a nice full-size knife coming in at 7.94 inches overall. It has a 3¼ inch drop point blade, as you see there, with a 3.13 inch cutting edge. Your blade is made from tungsten carbide, which is an extremely hard material with a hardness of 71 HRC. That's insane. So this knife should have crazy good edge retention, just like my Sandrin Torino that I tested whenever these first came out. This one had great edge retention. I expect this one may even have better edge retention. Besides the super high hardness, tungsten's also not gonna rust on you, which is awesome for somebody like myself that lives in a very high humid environment. There's no jimping on the spine, which I'm good with. You have a blade hole for deployment. We'll talk about that later. And a tungsten carbide blade, the main objective for it is going to be great edge retention. Now, it should hold its toothy edge for a really long time. We're going to test that in just a second. But of course, being that it has such a high hardness, now they say it's toughened tungsten carbide, which I'm sure they do something a little bit different to it, but you're still not going to want to impact any really hard materials or, you know, come in contact with staples. You're probably going to chip the edge. We'll see how and if it's brittle in the testing, but I don't think it should be super brittle like a lot of people think. But you shouldn't be buying this to be batoning with or, you know, doing crazy hard use stuff. It should be a knife that you want for the exceptional edge retention. The blade finish on this is called their scratch finish. It looks like a hand rub satin, and I gotta say I much prefer this over the terrible looking finish that came on this Sandrin Torino. It looks like it was drugged behind somebody's truck on the cement. It's got scratches in every which direction. This one looks like a hand rub satin. It's a much more aesthetically pleasing finish. Now this should be a really good slicer for a couple of reasons. It's got super thin stock there at 0.06 or 1.5 millimeters. And it has a Scandi ground edge. It has a slight convex to it. So I'm really interested to see how this was going to perform. Let's find out. Man, the first thing I noticed was how incredibly sharp this knife came from the factory. Very sharp, and I was kind of curious to see how this Scandi grind would slice cardboard, and for your single wall cardboard, it's fine. It's not going to cause much resistance. Yeah, it sliced great. I could have probably done this all day, especially with the tungsten carbide, but yeah, it was slicing good so far. And I'm kind of interested to see how it's going to do with, say, like the denser materials. But as of now, yeah, really good. So we're testing ergos here, and being that it has a Scandi grind, it's going to be great at feather sticking, no doubt. But I'm more checking to see how comfortable it is. And in the front portion of the scales, it's kind of like concaved, and it's wide, so it fills out the hand nice. And I was able to get a lot of force into the wood, and it was a lot more comfortable than I expected because it is under a ½ inch in thickness, so it's on the thinner side, but it was comfortable. No sharp areas or sharp spots that I noticed. And this is where I was very impressed on how easily, I mean, you see I'm using a pointer finger grip, which if I'm doing that grip, that means it has to be sharp because I'm not able to exert that much downward force because of my neuropathy. But yeah, I decided to take this one a lot further than I normally do. I usually stop at around 50 to 100 cuts, but I did the sisal rope portion of the testing over, I think, 3 or 4 days, just because my hands can't handle much more than the 50 to 100 anymore. I start to cramp up really bad, and I get blisters usually because I'm getting tired. But I decided, why not? I just marked it down in my little notebook on where I stopped at that day, and you know, it never felt like this edge was falling off at all. I need to go back and watch Cedric Caneda's video whenever he did the testing on, I think, the Sandra knife. See how much that one did, because all I know is I stopped at 1,000 cuts of 1/2-inch sisal rope, and I just stopped because sisal rope is not cheap, and my testing supplies already per year are outrageously expensive for, you know, the price of materials now. So I stopped it there. It could have definitely, we'll test the edge. It could have definitely done more. The edge feels great still. There's no bumps in the edge whatsoever. Still feels clean. And like I said, it never slowed down, man. I was kind of shocked because I did this same type of testing with my Sandra Torino. And I don't know if it's because the Torino has a pretty big secondary bevel on it, on the Scandi, you know, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. This one, it looks like a true Scandi from what I'm looking at, unless it has like a very fine micro, but it's like a convex Scandi. And yeah, all the world. Now, I'm sorry if it's, I had to speed it up. I think I'm at 7 times right now, because just the sisal rope cutting alone without speeding it up was 43 minutes of cutting. 43 minutes. That's insane, because usually before I speed it up, it's probably anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, to give you a perspective. Look, sorry, it's super speed now. Yeah, because this would have took, you know, so much time, and I know most people aren't going to want to watch all this. So yeah, I stopped at 1,000 cuts. That's all you really need to know. The drop point, that extra belly, makes these cuts very, very easy. I can either do push cuts like you're seeing me do here. You can do the pull through cuts. You can do the sawing motion cuts. They're all going to be great. This is where it's really going to excel on a flat cutting surface. You know, in hand cuts, you got enough straight edge that it did fine as well. So just depends on what you're doing, what type of cutting you're going to be taking on that day. But so far, with the cardboard and the sisal rope, this one performed great. You know, even though it's a Scandi grind, you got thin blade stock, and you're not going to notice any of the resistance yet from that thicker, from where the Scandi goes into your full thickness of the blade stock. But we're going to test out the denser materials in just a second. But yeah, so far so good. I couldn't have been happier with how this one performed, especially, you know, this is a premium knife with a premium price tag. If it wouldn't have performed well here, then I think it would have been an issue, because that's why you'd be buying this knife anyway. If you're looking for a knife that's got just unbelievable edge retention, yeah, then this is definitely a good option. So the tip's too high to use it to do a drag through cut. Bellies is going to be the way to go there. And so far is good. Now, I did right away with the denser materials like the tubing and that dense corner cardboard, I noticed some pretty heavy resistance. So double wall cardboard would probably do the same thing. It's going to cause some drag. But overall, this one was a blast. Well, I have to say, this was by far the best performer I've ever tested. Hands down. I'd love to get one of these in the hands of Pete from Cedric Canada to get him to do his sisal rope cutting, because, yeah, 1,000 cuts is the most I've ever done, and it could have definitely done more. I just was starting to get tired. I did those over several days, and, you know, sisal rope cost me a lot, plus all my other materials. I want to see if there's any edge left on this. I would expect it definitely should have some edge in the straight edge portion, but the belly is what I really want to see. If it has anything left, I'll be shocked, especially on phone book paper. Okay, from here to where the belly starts, it's still hair shaving sharp. What? That's insane. Look, by the belly where I was doing all the cutting with the sisal rope. Now, it's got a couple of small hang-ups, but that's crazy. And even crazier, I expected to have a little bit of degradation to the apex where I could feel it, and it still feels smooth like a brand new razor blade. So, call me impressed. Now let's take a look at the deployment on this one. So you have the blade hole on both sides that's accessible. You have a reversible deep carry pocket clip, and you have an ambidextrous lock. So this is a completely ambidextrous knife. Excellent job. So the reverse flick, outstanding. Thumb flick, let's see. Now, I can do the thumb flick, but it's much easier to do the reverse flick just because, you know, to do the thumb flick, you kind of got to bury your finger in there. You got a thin blade stock and it's kind of down a little bit. So I can do it, but it's much easier to do the reverse flick in my opinion. Slow roll's easy. If you want to pinch down, you can. Or if you want to use that crossbar, works great also. This knife is very smooth. And from the looks of it, hopefully you can see that in there, it looks like you just have some very massive phosphorus bronze washers in there. And I love it. It should get smoother and smoother over time. And then being that the phosphor bronze is a lot softer than the super hard tungsten, it should burnish itself rather quickly, making it smoother and smoother every time you open this thing. I did not see anything on the site about what this is riding on. So like I said, from the looks of it, it looks like big, massive phosphor bronze. I hope that's correct. If I find out otherwise, I'll put it up on the screen. So now let's take a look at the handle area. So right now, I think all they're offering for this model is the glass reinforced nylon handles that have a little bit of texture. It's grippy enough. I don't find it slick, at least not now it didn't. It says that they will also be offering it in G10 and aluminum. You have those massive, chain ring bolts that are through. They go through and through. I'm not exactly sure how big the hardware is on there. I know I put a T25 on there, and if I bury it all the way in there, it'll work. But I think it's bigger than a T25, which is massive. And then I'm not too sure why they went with the T6 here. I would have at least liked to see T8 there, especially when you already went with massive bolts here. Just because T6 have a tendency to strip a lot easier than T8 or greater. These scales are flat, and then you have these chamfers along the side. There's no sharp areas in this FRN. They did a good job of knocking off any spots that could be cause for concern. And as you see, you do have stainless steel liners in there. You have a GRN backspacer as well. And even though these scales are on the thinner side, they're under a 1/2 inch, they're wide, so it fills out the hand really well. And I wasn't sure how it was going to be in the ergo department, but I was rather impressed, especially the way they did this right here. Put this little slight concave spot so you can choke up. And the width from here to here really fills out the hand. I was able to get a lot of force into the wood. And like I said, a lot more comfortable than I expected it to be. Back here is very comfortable. Over time, it might start to fatigue you. But, you know, for the amount of cutting I did, which is more than the average person would do in a year's time, it did great. There was no sharp spots that I really noticed. That clip stayed out of the way of my palm. Whenever I'm choked up, I could tell it's there, but it's not hurting me or anything. This pull grip is pretty comfortable. And then if for some reason you want to do the reverse gas station knife fight grip, it's very comfortable because this is rounded over. We already said you have a deep carry pocket clip that does sit all the way down, and it is reversible. You can see this little tab right here. I guess it's a filler tab. I'm guessing you just swap it over. If you're a lanyard guy, that's why they said they went with the through hole screw there, so you can run paracord through there. Your stainless steel liners, let's take a look at that in there, are partial inset stainless steel liners, as you can see. Hopefully you can see that in there. Just to house this crossbar lock, and then on your GFN you have skeletonization to try to help bring down the weight, because it's a bigger knife, bigger scales, and it brings the weight down to 4.9 ounces, which I found it to be manageable. I don't find it to be overly hefty or anything. One thing that I like a lot, and I thought it was pretty interesting, is being that you have the crossbar lock, they kind of did somewhat similar to what Benchmade did with the Anthem, except they used 2 coil springs in there. Instead of Omega springs, which have the tendency to snap over time. Those coil springs are going to last a lot longer than Omega springs. The pads on the crossbar have just the right amount of texture to where they're gripping the finger, but not uncomfortable at all. So excellent job there. We'll do some light spine wax. Yeah, rock solid. Your lockup, no movement up or down, which is awesome. There's no flex in this lock at all. And the only side to side is flex because you have a thin blade and it's NGFN. I totally expected that, but no actual movement in the pivot area. And that's all I'm really caring about here. Now for some quick size comparisons. Here it is next to the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. And it's just a little shorter than the Spyderco PM2 and a good bit bigger than the Power 3. And lastly, it's just about identical in length to the Spyderco Manix 2, and it's just a little bigger than the Benchmade 940. Now, being that absolutely no knife is perfect, what are my nitpicks and complaints? So first off, sharpening. Tungsten at 71 HRC is very, very hard material, and you have a Scandi ground edge. So it's just going to take a bit of time if you decide to sharpen the entire Scandi, or you do kind of like Sandrin does and they put a secondary bevel on the Scandi grind. But I would prefer to keep it like this. Now, Olive Knives may offer free sharpenings. If I find that out on the site, I'll put it up here, but that's just something to be aware of. Now, you saw the cutting I've done and the edge is still great. Next, you can see how they just deburred the blade hole. It's, like I said, very hard material, so not the easiest thing to deburr. And it's not really sharp. I think it's because of how thin the blade stock is. It's got a little bit of grab to it, but you can see that they knocked that edge off. And only time I really notice it is with the thumb, and it's not terrible, but over time it may start to wear you out a little bit. I don't know. And you also got to remember that my hands are way more beat up than the average person. I would have loved to see this body screw right here be a T8 or bigger, especially when you already have these massive bolts here. Not a deal breaker, but the small T6s just have a much greater chance of stripping out. As long as you're careful and you use a fresh bit, you should be fine, as long as there's not red Loctite on it or anything. And lastly is the price. Now, these are $333. It's a US company. Tungsten is a very, very hard material to work with. I can promise you this material breaks a lot of dies that are, machining this. I used to work in a machine shop, and a lot of our cutters are made of tungsten carbide. So I'm not sure the process, how they do that, but I can imagine that it's a pretty hard process. The reason I say the price, because we'll jump back to Sandrin. This is a smaller knife. As you can see, the Sandrin Torino, which is also in tungsten carbide. But the tungsten blade and G10 scales comes in at $259. This one has a 3-inch blade. This one has a 3.13-inch blade. So you have a bigger blade there, and you have an overall bigger knife. This one has a crossbar lock. This one has the Snex Super Lock. They call it a recall lock, but pretty much that's what that is. You can also get the Torino with the contoured carbon fiber scales for less than this knife at $299. Which one of these two do I prefer? As far as performance goes, hands down the Lenta. Comfort, Lenta. Now this one is a little bit more EDC friendly because it's super lightweight and it's a little bit more compact. However, I can manipulate this lock easier. This one, like I said, was a better performer, better slicer. So, all that said, I have really, really enjoyed this knife, especially the fact I geek out on these high edge retention blades. And if you're looking for something with just off the charts edge retention, then this is a great option. If you do a lot of breaking down of cardboard, this is a great knife. You could use this for outdoor stuff. It's going to be a good feather sticker because of the Scandi grind. You just don't want to be doing any super hard impact stuff because of the tungsten carbide. But if nothing I talked about earlier was a deal breaker for you and you don't mind the price, then yeah, I can definitely recommend it. It's a very, very well made knife. that will blow your mind on edge retention. Love to hear y'all thoughts. So that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave those down below and I'll do my best to get back with you. Hope every one of y'all is having a fantastic day today. And remember, keep your blade sharp like the Olive Knives Lenta is. Smile more. Peace, peace, peace.